Troy, welcome to Radioacktiva, man. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, and I just saw the show at the Catacombs, man. What an amazing setting, performance. Like, how did this happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's over the last, I don't know, 10, 12 years, we've been looking for interesting places to play, all over the world. We get to travel so much, and I love playing music for whoever will listen.
Uh-huh.
But sometimes you find yourself, kind of getting in a rut of, we're playing this place and we're doing this festival, and it's kind of, all the same, like sometimes you feel like you're in Groundhog Day,
Yeah.
it does get repetitive. So we're looking for interesting places to play. And this was an idea that's been around for a long time. And um there's a lot of logistical stuff that happens to, you have to talk to the French government, and
Permissions.
we have to get permissions, and that's a lot of red tape that you have to sift through. So it's been this idea for a long, long time, and we finally got the opportunity to do it. And we figured we better take advantage of this moment and capture as much of it as we can. So that's what you're seeing
Okay.
when you watch the movie.
How do you like pick the set list for such a particular venue? Like, how do you choose which tracks will come and will be performed for such an audience?
Yeah. So we picked these songs because down there's not really any electricity, so you can't really play the rock and roll stuff, and it just feels like not appropriate in the setting. When you're playing rock music and you've got an audience, you kind of feed off of their energy. So
Mm.
this is completely different. And so what it really did was it made us kind of go introverted and really, you know, investigate some of our more vulnerable, melancholy material that we've been, that we tap into, a little bit on each record. And so we all felt it was more appropriate to kind of strip away all the rock and roll elements and yeah, bring in the strings and have them do what normally we would do on guitar and stuff. So it was interesting to see that come together with the string players because it we whether we admit it or not, we are arranging our rock and roll songs, and our rock music. So when you put it in the setting of orchestral movements, it just changes everything. It makes it more dramatic, and it kind of tugs at your emotions more.
And about that, I wasn't sure what to expect when I read the news. The Queens of Stone Age will be playing here and all that. So when I just saw the movie, now I was like, wow, this is amazing. I love what happened with William Circumstance and Suture Up Your Future.
Sure.
Just the two guys just playing. That was amazing. How did you guys tell me a bit about that process, turning those songs into this sort of performance. It's not like an unplugged kind of thing, it's a whole
Yeah,
different thing. Tell me
I,
about
I
that,
agree.
please.
Yeah, I agree. And we figured, it is sort of unplugged, but we did have a car battery down there to plug in the keyboards, because that was really the only electric instrument down there. And we had tried to do other songs too, and it was all about experimenting, see what would work. And we weren't sure, we just had the idea of doing Suture Up Your Future, and we just did it in that setting, and it worked, and we just happened to capture this really bizarrely like quirky version of the song, and it really opened it up to what the meaning of the lyrics are. And again, when you strip away all of the rock, you know you of course, Josh's vocals are so beautiful he's just singing, not concerned about playing and singing. And so for me and Mike to just fill in the gaps with the bass and the keyboards really turned it on its head a little bit in a good way. And Villains and Circumstances, even when we're playing it in the rock setting, it's always a very emotional song because, it's about missing your family, being away for so long. And, you know, these, it's hard to express, like what we're usually doing, and then to pull ourselves out of that environment and do something really intimate. And there is no, audience that's responding. So you don't
It,
know, dude, is that good? I don't know. I felt it was good. And so, we basically recorded it about a year ago, and now we're seeing it and we're like, oh, that brings me back to how we felt that day, because when you're down there for 14 hours, you start to think about life and you start to think, wow, like what, look at that skull over there. Who was
yeah.
that guy? Who was that person? They had a family
And
too, So it's just sort of opened up this sort of like, well, you better appreciate this moment because it's never going to
and
happen again.
on Villain of Circumstance, there's this shot of an apple.
Yeah.
It's a very short shot of an apple. I thought it was awesome. I don't know if it was an accident or something, but I thought, the apple, the fruit, the beginning, the Bible, the catacombs, everything come to mind on that song and in that moment. It was, just this tiny detail that I loved about the film.
Well, that's fortunately we had a really great film crew, and they were French, and they were coming from a completely art based like reality, I guess. They were coming from a spot that we make rock videos and we try to capture, ourselves on film, but they really did an amazing job of putting it together and editing it, and the apple was probably just someone's lunch that they didn't get to yet. But of course, so when you put it in the context of a song like that, you're like, that just opens up the possibilities of what consciousness is. And you can get really deep about it. And I don't know how much time you have, but I'll just keep talking if you want.
I'm glad just to hear you talk. I'm a big Queens of the Stone Age fan, so this is a great thing for me. I can just
Thank you.
also ask you about lots of geeky stuff about the band, but I'll focus on the show. Um, uh, about the show. Um, I just forget what I was going to ask you.
That's okay.
But by any, do you like? Do you know if has there ever been? Has there ever music has ever been played there or rock before?
So it's my understanding that people have been trying to do it for years. We've been trying to do it for years. And it's my understanding that I'm sure I could assume that maybe there's been attempts to play music down there, but no one's been ever able to film it, record it, and do, the things that we had to go through to get this, this final result. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work and a lot of figuring out. Um, you got to, cut through red tape and deal with the French government and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it just opened my eyes to how much work something like that takes, and it's not, so you're kind of humbled by it as well.
I had no idea that the catacombs were, I don't know, I've only seen them on this movie, but I had no idea they were, like this big. So I thought it was going to be like a performance on a particular place of the catacombs. But when
Yeah,
I just kept watching the movie, uh, it took place in different scenarios on the catacombs. Did you
yeah,
choose it? Tell me a bit about that because I think it's fascinating.
yeah, yeah. So that was my first. So we went to the to do a tour of the catacombs the day before. I'd never been in there. I think the other guys have maybe been on there once or twice, but it was my first experience. And so when you're doing the tour, you're like, wow, this hallway looks incredible, and there's these arches, and it's the one spot where the ceiling is not right on top of you. And so we were looking for places that not only looked visually stunning, but had a particular sound, and so I never came is in that this really cool hallway that we're kind of bunched together just in a line, and that was pretty interesting. And then when you're talking about villains, there's just little tiny area where literally drops of water coming down, water, I say in quotations, you know there's human remains everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think Suture Up Your Future was just little passageway where there was this thing in the middle. I don't even know if it was a viewing spot or you could look down to the lower level. But it just seemed really interesting because it's basically a little tiny roundabout where tour goers would go this way and then this way, and but it was like a little passageway, and so that kind of struck us as interesting as well. And so it was like yeah, 4 or 5 different locations.
And on that song, Josh is singing under this Latin thing. I googled
Yes.
it. It means something like a wave or days flow away from us. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
th-
So throughout the catacombs, there are little signs like that everywhere, where basically it's like, I mean, I don't read Latin and I'm not very versed in French either, but it's basically like, well, death comes for all of us. You're like, okay, you want to try that again?
yeah.
Let's play
Uh,
this song now. So um there's a bit of poetry involved and a bit of like really realizing that life is short and you gotta really enjoy every moment of it. Even when you're going through something terrible, that too will pass, as long as you stay alive.
you guys even had the chance, to do more than one shot of each song, or just like a run of the recording?
So there are um I mean, we did multiple takes, but we didn't edit anything together. We just took the best take. I think maybe we stopped at 3 takes because it's a lot. Um, some of them are the first take, some of them are the second, some of the third. I forget which ones are which, but it's 5 songs, and it took 14 hours of just the production of the music and the filming. The editing. I have no idea how much time that took, but that's how much you get out of that short of amount of time. Because the next day, the tours have to be right on time.
Yeah.
So you get one shot, and that's what we got.
Acoustically, was it easy to record the whole microphones and all that for the instrument? How do you do that?
So we have we had our sort of the engineer that we work with on the last 3 records, and he does a lot of our TV performances too. His name is Mark Rankin. He's incredible, and he was there, and we move at the speed of inspiration, and usually that doesn't mean like taking a lot of time to figure out what microphones you're going to use and what gear you're going to use. So he's so helpful for us in those environments where it has to happen fast. And we just had these little clip-on microphones that were wireless. So he was in another room, just listening to as everything as it was being done. And you're dealing with wireless technology. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So you're
Yeah.
dealing with these limitations of like, so everyone kind of had a little clip-on microphone, and the string players had the same. And so some, and then we also had microphones in the actual room, and so we were able to capture some really interesting sound because it just sounds weird down there. It doesn't sound like you think.
I guess it's worth asking, are you like a religious guy?
I wouldn't say, I would say I'm more of a spiritual person.
Mm.
I mean, I understand religion, and I have a, I have a background, and I went to Christian schools and stuff like that, and for me, um I'm more or less of someone who takes the golden rule and applies it to their life. And I don't, I feel like I don't need to be reminded to practice being, following that philosophy. So religious to me means you're gonna have to, go to church on Sunday, and it's a routine that, is not something that I I can really find myself doing anymore. But I feel connected to the universe, and sometimes things work out and sometimes they don't.
I wanted to ask you because, I remember the first time I went to Italy. I'm also very spiritual. I don't go to church, but I do pray.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I got into the whole idea of, let's meet this place, the church and the Vatican and all
So
that.
the
And I
Vatican, yeah.
remember and I remember the energy of the place. I remember I couldn't do anything but just sit down and stare.
Yeah.
And all of these feelings and things were just coming in, and the sun was in the right place. All of that happened. And in this scenario that you guys were performing, was that like ever a thing when it come to, perform those songs and getting to the place and getting to the groove and perform the songs?
So that's interesting that you bring that up because, yeah, we, a few days before we went to the catacombs, we were in Rome, and we all took a tour of the Vatican as well. And it's an amazing place. It's incredible. And yes, you can't help but feel like somebody procured all of this art, and the what it takes to, like, there is reverence when you walk into a building like that, just like there's reverence to when you walk into a space like the catacombs, because you're like, this is the place where you kind of have to look at yourself and go, do I belong here? Is this the right place? Am I doing this right? Am I being respectful to the surroundings,
Yeah.
And that's kind of goes along with our philosophy of, like, let's try to play as many places like this as we can that make us feel like we're really in a special spot, and we have to, cherish it. And it reminds you of why you do things like play music or create art or witness, such things. So yeah, I would say those kind of feelings are important. Those kind of feelings keep us grounded, and also make us reach for the light, when things are dark.
Just a few more things, Troy, before we
Sure.
go. If you could please record the ID, just say, hi, this is Troy Van Leeuwen for Queens of the Stone Age, and you're listening
Hmm.
to Radioactiva, the Rock Planet.
Radioactiva, the rock planet.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Hi, this is Troy Van Leeuwen from Queens of the Stone Age. You're listening to Radioactiva, and I forgot the last rock planet.
The Rock Planet, yes.
The rock planet. Let me just do that again. Radioactiva, the rock planet. Hi there, this is Troy Van Leeuwen from Queens of the Stone Age. You're listening to Radioactiva, the rock planet.
Great, man. Thank you very much.
You got it.
I had to ask you, of course, any touring plans for Latin America that you could share with us without spoiling anything? I know there's, contracts and agreements and all that, but
Yeah,
we
no, I
can't
mean,
help but ask.
there's no announcements, and there's no official, plans made, but I know our intention is, I mean, we have to come see you guys. Um, so that's our intention. I believe there will be plans to follow. Um, I mean, we didn't get the chance to go down there for our last record, and I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, you know, we haven't
I mean,
heard.
well, I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but what happened with Josh's health was unavoidable. So, but we plan to make it up. That's what I say. That's what I think.
Perfect, Vin,
Yeah.
and Josh looks great. I love how he sort of goes through the catacombs, like sort of dancing, sort of,
Hmm.
you know, I love how he moves during the performance. I I
Yeah.
I don't remember ever seeing him like that because he's always playing.
Yeah. To me, I think that's something he wants to kind of do more of because he's such a great singer, and to watch him sing and play is incredible, you know. And but he's just like, I just want it's just so much easier to express yourself vocally. You know, it's just a natural thing. You know, when you're going from here to here, it's a short distance. When you're going from here to here to here, you know, it's not as direct. And so lately, you know, I see him wanting to do more of that. And so, and that's fine for us. We can pick up, you know, the sonic slack when it comes to, you know, our music. You know, we've got Dean and myself and Mike. We all play every instrument, and yeah, I mean, you might see more of that. You know?
Great. I mean, you guys are such a badass band. You know,
Oh,
John is an
thank you.
awesome drummer. So
I
um,
didn't mean to overlook him, but
yeah, yeah, I know,
that's
don't
the
worry.
only thing he does, and he
Yeah,
does it so well that he doesn't need any other distractions. He's so
no,
good at being a drummer, and he's just a natural force of nature.
absolutely.
And so he's so good that sometimes you forget that he's there. It's so effortless, you know. There's a real talent that he has.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to see you guys back in Latin America as soon as
Yeah,
possible. They're just
yeah.
letting me know that we're out of time. So Troy, thank you very much. Love the performance on the
Thank you.
film. Love the movie. And well, once again, thank you very much for being with us on Radioactiva.
Yeah, you. Thank you, man. I will see you soon. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Take it easy,
Bye-bye.
Julio.
Thank
Gracias,
you.
Julio.